Good morning, everyone. Kate Borer and Fiona Pearman tuning in for this week's Facebook Live, where we are talking about right-sizing your inner critic. And Fee, I think we wish we had the magic pill here that took self-doubt, inner critic, imposter syndrome, whatever language you want to use on this conversation that would take it away, and doesn't exist. And there's work to be done in terms of being able to reframe and right-size often the self-doubt, the voice in our head that, rears its ugly head in moments where, we make a decision and we're second guessing ourselves, or potentially someone looks at us funny or asks us a question we can't answer. All of these sorts of situation dynamics that often trigger, this inner critic voice.
Yes. It's so much in the stories we tell ourselves. As something happens, as we get some feedback, as we notice someone, it might just be, they're rolling their eyes, or they made an offhand comment, or they even just looked away while we were talking. And somehow that piece of intel hits our brains. And, our brains are very good at meaning making. That's what they do. And they'll often go to the negative. They'll often start to go, oh my God, that means they're not interested, or that means they don't agree with me, or that means, and we've started this internal dialogue that is really, really unhelpful. And there are things we can do about this, but we need to get conscious that it's happening. We need to actually be able to catch ourselves in the moment and to see, oh, okay, there it goes again. There's the voice. As we said last week, no point trying to pretend it's not there. It exists. It's part of us. So, our first step is, well, what can we do to actually just recognize it's there and maybe just slow down a little bit so that we can think about what's happening as opposed to being hijacked by that story.
Yeah, I think, the irony is very rarely, if ever, is that voice, that cheerleader going, go, amazing, keep doing it, you're amazing. Like, we always default to the negative. And it's always really unhelpful, right? And so I think to be able to start to your point, slow down, be really conscious about the sorts of environments, conversations, people, dynamics that are likely to trigger this self-doubt and this inner critic. I think spotlighting that is really important. I think the piece here is, very rarely are these stories that we jump on into a reflection of the truth and the reality. They're perhaps a reflection of maybe a portion of reality or a version of reality we experienced many years ago. But often, the story we tell ourselves and the reactivity that we experience in that moment is very rarely directly correlated to the situation we find ourselves. So I think, it's often a response to uncertainty, or, when we see that look on the face, it's like, what does that mean? I don't know. Inherently, we want certainty. We want to know as quick as possible, which is why often we connect dots that shouldn't be connected and create a story in our head. So I think our ability to just recognize that this happens for everyone, for many of us, it's actually now habitual. It's on auto cue. That doesn't mean we can't unwire it and we can't slow it down and weaken the potency and the power of it. But it does mean the first thing we have to do is actually start to reconcile and redefine our relationship with it.
Yes. And this is where the work is, as we're constantly saying, there's no magical way to deal with this. It does require a little bit of work. It requires some self-awareness. It requires us being prepared to examine ourselves and go within a little bit. And sometimes that can feel a bit uncomfortable. However, the rewards are so phenomenal. And we see this day in, day out with the women that we work with, how just even getting this piece of questioning the story, of reality checking what's going on, and then starting to calibrate, starting to actually unpack it a little bit and go, oh, okay, well, it could mean that, where my default went, where my autopilot suggested, and maybe it doesn't necessarily mean that. And, we can use ourselves as a test point. Sometimes we're a little bit close. We can also ask other people, sometimes people who are in the same meeting. Did you notice? Did you think? Just getting some more intel and some other data that starts to mean that we're not fixated on that voice in our head that has defaulted to the worst possible scenario.
Yeah, of course. And to be able to do that, obviously we need to slow down. Obviously we need to pause our reaction or our response and say, hey, I need more information, a bit like dial a friend, right? And then when we get that information, of course, we are one source of that information. But when we get that information, it's about calibrating that information. It's about, okay, objectively looking at those perspectives. And to be honest, most of the time they're opinions as opposed to facts, but taking those perspectives and identifying, okay, now I put that all together and I have more certainty, more information. What is it that meant? And, you know, I think it's also useful sometimes in this point to go, you know what, do I really need to be calibrating anything? And maybe I just let it go through to the keeper. Maybe I don't need to know. It's not important, because I think there are definitely moments we get hijacked that actually are unnecessary, and we could just, you know, let it go and not go into the vortex of unpacking and you know, untangling a lot of what goes on up here. I think the potency of this process is about getting it out of our head, getting it into some sort of externally orientated, you know, whether it's a conversation with someone else or it's paper or journaling or whatever it is, it's getting it out of our head so that it's got a place to land. And of course, the minute that you're able to look at something with some perspective, things shift and new perspectives come. And that's when we have the opportunity to right size it.
And this is the goal, of course, that if we are able to just do that slowing down, to check what's going on, to actually, you know, dismiss if it's really not something big, or, you know, at least right size it, our world expands and new options, new possibilities become immediately available. All of those things are off the table when we're caught in the drama and the, you know, dynamic of the inner critic judging us and you know, taking us down a rabbit hole. As soon as we are able to settle that down a little bit, our world expands and things that weren't visible before become available and apparent to us, and that is so rewarding. So the number of times we've seen people do this and almost look back at themselves and laugh, you know, I can say this personally, but also so many clients who can sort of go, oh wow, you know, I would have been down that rabbit hole again, but now I'm able to do this. It's an incredibly powerful piece of personal work. It has big ramifications for us in all aspects of our lives, including particularly in the workplace.
Yeah, awesome. So guys, we're going to leave it there. If you know someone who'd benefit from this or any of our other confidence conversations, we'd love for you to share this with either your network broadly or directly with those people as well. If you would like to be notified when we're going live, please be sure to like us, our Facebook page. Of course, you can access lots of great resources, videos, past Facebook Lives on that page as well. And if you'd like to go deeper with your relationship with Core Confidence, please visit our website, coreconfidence.com.au.